Local school resource officers are at the center of a federal investigation. The U.S. Department of Education is looking into the Salt Lake City School District after allegations that minority students are being treated unfairly. Good for Utah's Nadia Crow explains.
At both high schools in the Salt Lake City School District, you will find school resource officers or police officers who work in the schools.
And we have 5 junior highs in the city, but only 2 of them have an officer there full time.
One of them is Glendale Middle School, home to a growing number of minority students.
We're seeing about 80 to 100 on average arrests by the police officers in the junior high at Northwest and Glendale over the last 5 years. If you look at it, you see 0 to 1 going on at Clayton.
Salt Lake City School Board member Michael Clara says it's because full-time resource officers are stationed there. And he says it creates a direct school-to-prison pipeline.
But we're introducing them into the criminal justice system at a much younger age, and then we're conditioning them to expect that their behavior is going to be responded to in a law enforcement way.
That's why Clara says he penned a 15-page letter to the U.S. Department of Education stating minority students are being targeted and unfairly and unproportionately disciplined compared to their white counterparts. So I contacted the Salt Lake City Police Department to ask them about their school resource officers. How are they trained? How do they decide how many go into a particular school? Well, the department declined to comment. The school district released this statement saying in part, for the past few years, Salt Lake City School District leaders and equity advocates have been meeting with community organizations, such as the Disproportionate Minority Contact Subcommittee of the Utah Board of Juvenile Justice, to study data from our district and from across the state. We look forward to the Office for Civil Rights Review and hopefully learning additional ways to help address any possible inequities for the young people we serve.
If the school district wants to, we can mediate. They can mediate with me and members of the community and implement our solutions. We can even look at state level solutions and having legislation passed.
But there's no timeline for when the investigation will wrap up. In Salt Lake City, Nadia Crow, Good for Utah.
The U.S. Department of Education is now in the fact-finding phase of that investigation. Clara hopes this leads to a change top to bottom in how resource officers are used and how students are disciplined.
Accusations of mistreatment and discrimination of minority students.
That's what the U.S. Department of Education is looking into in the Salt Lake City School District. Fox 13's Tamara Vaifanua reports on that investigation.
Michael Clara is a member of the Salt Lake City School District Board. He wrote a 15-page letter to the Office of Civil Rights in May, accusing the school district of mistreating and discriminating against minority students. He says he's heard too many stories to ignore.
The kid was walking down the hallway and was listening to music on his phone, which is not, it is against school policy. But then when the police officer approaches him and then he jerks away from the police officer, then it turns into resisting arrest.
Clara is questioning the district's use of school resource officers. Why some are stationed at schools with high ethnic populations and not others?
Right now, the police officers in the schools have no training. There's no kind of standard. There's no state law. There's no city law. There's no policy on how they're going to react towards students.
Mr. Clara worries that if students interact with police early on in life, it will lead to what researchers call the school-to-prison pipeline. The University of Utah has conducted research showing how students are funneled out of public schools into the juvenile and criminal justice systems.
And so we're actually creating a problem, for our students of color in this city, if that's how we're going to be treating them in school.
The Salt Lake City School District did not want to comment on camera, but they provided us a statement that reads in part, quote, "We are working proactively to implement policies and procedures that ensure equity for all students. We look forward to the Office for Civil Rights Review and hopefully learning additional ways to help address any possible inequities for the young people we serve." If OCR finds the district in violation of the claims, the district could lose federal funding and face other penalties. In Salt Lake City, Tamara Vaifanua, Fox 13 News, Utah.
The U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights is investigating the Salt Lake City School District for alleged racial discrimination against students of color. KUER's Whitney Evans reports.
Salt Lake City School Board member Michael Clara filed a complaint with the department in May, criticizing the district's disciplinary policies. He accuses the district of putting minority students on a collision course with law enforcement by placing a disproportionate number of Salt Lake City police officers in schools on the city's west side.
They're enforcing school policy as though it were state law. And that's, inappropriate, especially now here's where the complaint comes in, that you're only targeting a certain segment of our population in the school district.
Salt Lake City School District has a total of 8 police officers stationed at East, Highland, West, and Horizonte high schools, as well as Glendale and Northwest middle schools. But Salt Lake City police say the officers routinely visit other schools in the district. District spokesman Jason Olson said in a statement, district leaders and equity advocates have been meeting with community organizations such as the Disproportionate Minority Contact Subcommittee of the Utah Board of Juvenile Justice to study data from the district and from across the state. He added they're working proactively to implement policies and procedures that ensure equity for all students and look forward to the Office of Civil Rights review and learning additional ways to help address any possible inequities. Officials from the U.S. Department of Education did not respond to requests for comment on the investigation. Whitney Evans, KUER News.
El Distrito Escolar de Salt Lake está bajo la lupa del Departamento de Educación de los Estados Unidos. Esto tras recibir varias quejas de discriminación racial hasta estudiantes de grupos minoritarios, entre ellos hispanos. Un miembro de la mesa directiva del distrito, Michael Clara, dice haber hecho la queja para evitar injusticias y, aún más importante, prevenir que estudiantes abandonen la escuela y terminen como criminales. Lester Rojas informa.
A falta de respuesta por parte del distrito escolar de la ciudad de Salt Lake, luego que la hija de April Sorensen se vio agredida, además sancionada por la policía escolar, la llevó a darla de baja.
Y eso fue suficiente para mí. No estaba dispuesta a arriesgar la educación de mi hija ni su experiencia y esperar a que la escuela hiciera cambios. Entonces la saqué de la escuela.
Kaya Murray es una joven afroamericana que vivió una de muchas injusticias que rodean al distrito escolar de la ciudad capital. Controversia que, según Michael Clara, miembro del consejo del mismo distrito, tiene en la mira mayormente a estudiantes de grupos minoritarios y la razón principal que el distrito se encuentra bajo investigación.
Yo digo, eso es la razón porque tenemos niños que están enojados todo el tiempo, porque hay diferentes maneras que podemos ayudar a los niños que pueden hacer mejores niños y adultos también, y poniendo la policía atrás de ellos en la escuela no es justo.
Un estudio por parte de la Universidad de Utah muestra que por cada acción disciplinaria que recibe un estudiante de raza blanca, ya sea por suspensión o expulsión, 3.5 hispanos, nativoamericanos y afroamericanos son sancionados.
Y eso es que estaba haciendo el problema, que la policía estaba allí atrás de los estudiantes latinos que nomás estaban quebrando las reglas de la escuela, no del Estado.
Lo que estamos viendo es de que muy jóvenes están introduciendo este concepto de que los latinos y los afroamericanos siempre van a tener interacción con la policía y regularmente no es positiva.
Problema que preocupa a defensores de inmigrantes, puesto que a consecuencia de estas injusticias, estudiantes caen en un ciclo conocido como de escuela a la cárcel o School to Prison Pipe, que lleva a estudiantes a no terminar la escuela y terminar en la profesión equivocada.
Y 70% de las personas que están en la prisión ahorita en Utah nunca se graduaron de la escuela. Nosotros vemos que sí hay problemas con el futuro si no hacemos cambios ahorita.
Cambios que, dice Michael, tomarán tiempo, pero que está actualmente trabajando a nivel estado con representantes y senadores.
Que en las escuelas no podemos estar haciendo esto y necesitamos que entrenar a los policías cómo trabajar con niños y cosas así.
Desde la ciudad de Salt Lake, Lester Rojas, Noticias Univisión 32.